We are going to have a look at a work through of the May 2021 maths paper. So the first page is largely arithmetic. So for this one, addition, try to avoid the temptation to do it in your head. Set out your sum, make sure you line up your numbers correctly. Make sure you can read your numbers as well. And remember to do your carrying as you go across. So 2 plus 7 is 9 plus 1 is 10. Carry 1, 9 plus 5 is 14, plus 1 is 15, and carry the 1 across, and 3 plus 1 is 4. So now we're going to look at the subtraction sum. So 1005 minus 387. So 5 take away 7 we can't do. So in order to exchange, we're going to have to come all the way over to here, take from here, carry to here, leave 9 behind, carry to here, leave 9 behind, carry to here. So 15 take away 7 would be 8, 9 take away 8 is 1, 9 take away 3 is 6, giving you your answer of 618. Now always remember to transfer your answers over into the answer box. This space over here is your working space. This is where the marker will look for your answers. They won't come and look over here for your answers. So please make sure you bring your answers over into the answer box. Now here we're multiplying 24.3 by 2. When multiplying decimals, it makes sense to take the decimal point out. So we will do the sum 243 times 12. We have 1 decimal place in our sum. So make a little note to yourself that you need 1 decimal place in your answer. And go and do your long multiplication. So 2 times 3 is 6, 2 times 4 is 8, and 2 times 2 is 4. You're now multiplying by 10, so make sure you remember to put your 0 placeholder in here. 1 times 3 is 3, 1 times 4 is 4, and 1 times 2 is 2. Then you would add these together, 6, 1, carry the 1, 9, 2. So 2916. But remember, you have 1 decimal place in your sum, so you need to have 1 decimal place in your answer and make that nice and clear. Now, divide 576 by 0.8. Now, never divide by a decimal. It's always far easier to multiply them out to make them whole numbers. So if we times by 10, this will become 8. If we've times by 10 on this side, we should also times by 10 on this side to give us 5,760. And that is going to be our sum. And 5760 divided by 8, we'll go in here. So 8 will not go into 5. 8 goes into 57 7 times, carry 1, goes into 16 twice, and goes into 0 0 times. Your answer is 720. There is no need to make an adjustment here because you have multiplied both sides out by a factor of 10. So the answer to 5,760 divided by 8 is the same as the answer to 576 divided by 0.8. Okay, if we come down and have a look now at question number 2. So question number 2, the difference between which 2 square numbers is 39. So you may find it helpful here to write out your square numbers. So 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4, 3 is 9, 4 is 16, 5 is 25, 6 squared is 36, 49, 64, 81. Now, this will do for now, and let's have a look here. So we need the difference to be 39. So we really want to be looking at square numbers greater than 39 to start with. So if we look at 49, 49 take away 10 would be 39. Well, 10 isn't a square number. So now we'll look at 64. Well, 64 take away 39. If you want to do the sum, you can do it over here. You can use this space as well. If we leave that behind, 14 take away 9 is 5, 5 take away 3 is 2. So 64 take away 39 would leave us with 25. Well, 25 is a square number and 64 is a square number. Make sure you write 25 and 64. Do not write 5 squared and 8 squared here because they are not the square numbers, okay? They are the roots of the number with the indices. You should actually give the actual numbers here. Now 105 is the product of which 3 prime numbers? Now product, remember, means multiply. So if we do the inverse, if we divide, I would recommend maybe setting it up like this. So we're going to put 105 here, and we're going to look and see which prime numbers will go into 105. So the smallest prime number is 2. Well, 2 will not divide into 105 because it's an odd number. 3 would divide into 105 because 1 plus 0 plus 5 is 6. And remember, you can find if the number is multiple by 3 by adding the digits together. If the answer is a number in the 3 times table, you can divide by 3. So if we divide by 3, 105 divided by 3 would be 3 will go into 10 3 times, carry 1 would leave you with 5, so 35. And then 35 cannot be divided by 2, cannot be divided by 3, but could be divided by 5. And 35 divided by 5 would be 7. And 7 is a prime number, so it can only be divided by itself. So that would leave you with your 3 prime numbers, which will multiply together to give you 105. And they are 3, 5, and 7. And you can test that out yourself as well. 3 times 5 is 15, and 15 times 7 is 105. Okay, which number comes exactly halfway between 2 to the power of 4 and 4 to the power of 3? Well, 2 to the power of 4 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which equals 16. And 4 to the power of 3 is 4 times 4 times 4, which equals 64. And we would need to find the midpoint of two numbers, add them together, and then divide by 2. So 64 plus 16 is 80. So 64 plus 16 equals 80. And to find the midpoint, you would divide by 2, and 80 divided by 2 will give you 40. Now let's go and have a look at question 3. So question 3, you've been given some numbers and you need to put them into these boxes here in order to get the right answers. So they involve 6 single-digit numbers. A digit can be used only once in each calculation. So this is important. You need to work that one out there. Now, the first question you're being asked to insert correct digits into the shaded boxes below to make the sum correct. So here we have 1, 3, 4, 7, 8, and 9. You're being asked to insert digits in here to make the following sum correct. Well, this is your most useful starting point here. So the two numbers added together must equal 136. So you're looking for two ones numbers that will combine to give you either 6 or 16. Now, there are no numbers up here that will combine, that will add together to give you 6. So you're looking for two numbers that will add together to give you 16. So when we look here, 7 and 9 are your two numbers. Now, it doesn't really matter which order you put them in. You could have 9 here and 7 here, or 7 here and 9 here. It doesn't really matter. So I'm going to put 7 here and 9 here. These two together give me 16. So 136 take away 16 leaves me with 120. So I now need two tens numbers that will add together to give me 120. So that would be two ones numbers that will add together to give me 12. Well, these would be 4 and 8, okay? And we can put 4 here and 8 here, or you could put 8 there and 4 there. It doesn't matter. So you have two possible answers. You could have 47 plus 89, or 87 plus 49 would also work. So it doesn't really matter which way round they are, but that would be how you would solve that one. Now with this one, create a correctly solved calculation using 5 of the digits above and insert them below into the shaded boxes. Now we're dividing a 2-digit number by a single-digit number to give us a 2-digit number. Now we can only use the numbers up here. So this can be a bit trial and error, but I'm going to start with the two biggest numbers. Well, 89 is a prime number, so it can only be divided by 1 in itself. However, 98, if I had 98 is divisible by 7. It's 7 times 14. So I can divide by 7. That will give me 14. I have used the 9, the 8, the 7, the 1, and the 4. So therefore, I know I'm right. Okay. Lots of people answered this one with 91 divided by 7 equals 13. You can't do that because you will be using the 1 both times. Now looking at 3a, something add something times something equals 35. You need to remember BIDMAS. When you have mixed operations, you need to remember BIDMAS. So we need to do the multiplication bit first. So we're looking to multiply two numbers together that will get us close to 35 because we're only adding a single digit number. So multiplying by 1 won't get us anywhere near. If you multiply by 3, 3 times 9 would give you 27. And then 35 take away 27 would be 8, and you have an 8. So this would be one way of doing it. The other way of doing it would be if you were multiplying by 4. If you had 4 times 8 will give you 32. And then 35 take away 32 would leave you with 3. So you could add 3. So you have those possible answers there. But remember, with this one, you must do the multiplication first and the addition last because of the rules of BIDMAS. Let's come down and have a look at question number 4. This time you're being asked which number is closest to 0. Now, when comparing decimals, make them all the same length to start with. So we've got 4 decimal places here. So I'm going to add 3 zeros to this one, 1 to this one, 1 to this one, and 2 to this one. Now, if you then read these as whole numbers, it's far easier for you to see which one is closest to 0. And it would be this one, because 150 is closer to 0 than 1,000, 5,010, 1,050, 5,100. Now, the reason I recommend you do this is you are more familiar with the value of whole numbers than you are with the value of decimals. So making them all the same length and comparing them in this way makes it easy for you to identify either the smallest one or the largest one. Question number 5 is a pyramid, and you have been told, again, product. So you need to multiply, and each number on the brick equals the product of the two numbers immediately below it. Fill in the missing numbers. Well, 6 times something is 54. So hopefully your times tables are secure. You know that 6 times 9 is 54. Therefore, 9 times 7 will be 63. And now you need to do 54 times 63. So come over here, do your long multiplication. So 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 5 is 15, plus the 1 is 16. You're multiplying now by 60, so put your placeholder 0 in here. 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 5 is 30, plus the 2 would be 32. Add those together, and you have 3,402, and that will go in there. So now we are going to calculate a quarter of 120. So to find a quarter of 120, we would do 1/4. To find 1/4 of a number, you divide by 4. So 120 divided by 4 would be £30. Now to find 20% of 120, 10%, to find 10% of any number, you divide by 10. So 120 divided by 10 equals 12. To go to 20%, you would times that by 2, and that would be 24. So your answer there would be £24. You've now been asked to increase 120 by 35%. Well, a quarter is the same as 25%. So you've worked out that already, or you could just find 1%, which would be £1.20, and times by 35. Or you know that 10% is 12, so you could do 10% times 3, which would be 36, and 5% is half of 10%, so 5% equals 6, and if you add those together, you get 42. Now, the step everyone forgot to do, or lots of people forgot to do here, was to increase 120 by the 42. So you would then do 120 plus 42, which will give you £162. Now, with this question down here, £120 is the cost of a watch after a 20% discount has been applied. What was the original price of the watch? Now, the original price of the watch will always be 100%. We have taken 20% off, so we are left with 80% of the original cost, which we know equals £120. We're trying to find 100%. So the easiest way to do this is to think, what is the biggest number that will go into both 80 and 100? And your answer would be 20%. So to go from 80 to 20%, we would need to divide by 4. So if you've divided by 4 on that side, we will divide by 4 on this side. So 120 divided by 4 is 30. To go from 20% to 100%, we would times by 5. And 30 times by 5 is equal to 150. And that would be your original price. You can check that as well. So 10% of 150 would be equal to £15. Therefore, 20% would be equal to £30. And 150 take away 30 would give you 120. So you know you are correct. Coming down to question 7, we have 3 plus minus 12. So a plus and a minus, remember, equals a minus. So we're doing 3 take away 12. So your answer here will be minus 9. 1 2/5 minus 2/3. You would need to convert this, well, the fractions first of all, to have the same denominator. Because remember, when you're adding and subtracting fractions, they always have to have the same denominator. So 5 and 3 will both go into 15. So if we do 15 here and 15 here, to go from 5 to 15, I times by 3. So I will times by 3 up here to give me 6. And to go from 3 to 15, I times by 5. So 2 times 5 is 10. Now, because your second fraction is larger than your first fraction, you would need to get this first fraction into an improper fraction. So you would times the denominator by the whole number. So 1 times 15 is 15, plus 6 will give you 21. So you now have 21 over 15 minus 10 over 15. And with subtracting fractions, you subtract the numerators. So 21 take away 10 will give you 11. Your denominator will stay the same, 15. No simplification is required because 11 is a prime number and it isn't a factor of 15. So when it comes to dividing fractions, always get your mixed number into an improper fraction. So we're going to do 2 times 4 is 8, plus 3 is 11. So we have 11 quarters divided by 1/5. Now the rule for dividing fractions is keep, change, flip. So we're going to keep the first fraction. We will change the divide sign to a times and we'll flip this fraction upside down. So it becomes 5 over 1. We then have 11 times 5, which is 55. 4 times 1 is 4. So this would be acceptable as an answer, as an improper fraction, because it can't be simplified. Or you can decide to change this into a mixed number. So 4 will go into 55. And if you're not sure how to do that, you can stick it into a bus stop. So 55, 4 goes in once, carry 1. 4 goes in to 15 3 times with a remainder of 3. And you can change that into a fraction remainder by putting it over 4. So your answer there will be 13 3/4. Now coming down here, we have 14 take away 9, which will be 5. Remember, you always do the brackets first because of BIDMAS. And 6 plus minus 10. Well, a plus and a minus makes a minus. So 6 take away 10 would be minus 4. So your sum you're left with is 5 multiplied by minus 4. Now, when multiplying negative numbers, do the numbers first. So 5 times 4 is 20. We have a positive and a negative, and a positive and negative gives us a negative. So your answer there will be minus 20. So on this question 8, this is all about position and direction. So you're told that Mr. Jones is standing at coordinates 2, 2 on the grid below. If Mr. Jones follows the instructions below, what will be the coordinates of his final position? So don't be scared to draw on this drawing up here. This is what it's there for, if you like. So he's going north 3. So 1, 2, 3 north. East, if it helps you, never eat shredded wheat. Try to remember the order of your compass points. And we've gone 3 north. We're going east 5. So we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going south 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going west 2. 1, 2. And we're going north 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is where we have ended up. Okay, so we've ended up here at compass points 5, always read your x coordinate first, 6. Okay, so that's your compass point there for the first one. Now, in the second one, I'm going to change my pen colour for this one. Mr. Jones started at a different position. He followed the following instructions. He finished at 6, 5. So if we go to 6, 5, he finished here. Okay. What were the coordinates of his start position? So we need to go in reverse, but from this end. Okay, we need to start here and we need to do the opposite. So instead of going north 3, we're going to go south 3. So 1, 2, 3. Instead of going east 2, we're going to go west 2. So 1, 2. Instead of going south 5, we're going to go north 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Instead of going west 2, we're going to go east 2. 1, 2. And instead of going south 1, we're going to go north 1. And we would end up here. So the coordinates for his start position were 6, 8. Okay, so question number 9. The hardest part of this question, I would say, is actually kind of looking at the picture. It can be quite visually difficult for some people. Now, a square B is drawn inside circle A, and another circle C is drawn inside square B, and a further circle D is drawn inside circle C. If the radius of circle C is 5 centimetres, what is the area of square B? So your radius is the distance from the midpoint of the circle. So we're just focusing on circle C for now. It's the distance from the midpoint to the outer edge. So this would be my radius for circle C. If I know the radius is 5 centimetres, I can extend it the other way and I can get my diameter. My diameter will be 10 centimetres. Okay, so the diameter will be 10 centimetres here. If the diameter of circle C is 10 centimetres, that would be equal to the side length of square B. Okay, so if the diameter of circle C is 10, the side length of square B will also be 10. Now with a square, squares have 4 equal sides. Okay, so they have 4 equal sides, all of which will be 10 centimetres. They have asked me to find the area of square B. Well, the formula for area is length times width. Well, my length and width are 10, so I'm going to do the sum 10 times 10, and therefore my area will be 100 centimetres squared. So to calculate the circumference of a circle, you multiply the diameter by pi, where pi equals 3.14. So you may find it helpful to highlight the key information, and pi is 3.14. Using this information, calculate the circumference of circle C. Well, you've already worked out the diameter of circle C up here is 10. So the sum you're doing is 10 times 3.14. So you're going to move that decimal point 1 place forward to give you 31.4 as your circumference. So now down to question 10. So this shape, you're told it consists of 4 identical triangles. How many lines of symmetry does this shape have? Well, it will have a line of symmetry going down the middle here, okay, because this is a perfect mirror reflection, and it will have a line of symmetry going here. It does not have diagonal lines of symmetry. It only has 2 lines of symmetry here. Now, what is the order of rotational symmetry of this shape? Now, this is if we were to rotate around the center, how many times would, if you focus or try to focus mainly on one triangle, if you look at this triangle here, how many times will this triangle land on itself effectively as it goes round? Well, it won't land on this triangle here and cover this triangle here because they actually are opposite. They are mirror reflections of each other. This triangle would actually land exactly on this triangle here. And again, it would not land exactly on here because this is a mirror reflection of itself. So this shape would land on itself at 180 degrees and would land on itself again at a full 360 degree rotation. So it has order of rotational symmetry of 2. What is the area of one of the triangles above? Well, if you look here, the area of a triangle is base times perpendicular height divided by 2. You can work out your base length from this information here. So the two triangles plus the gap are 24 centimetres long. The gap is 4 centimetres. So if you do 24, take away 4, you would be left with 20, and you would divide that equally between those two triangles. So your base length of your triangle is 10. To work out your perpendicular height, the height of the whole shape is 16. This point, this midpoint here, this would be your perpendicular height, would be half of 16, which is 8. So your perpendicular height of your triangle is 8. So to work out your area, you would do 10 times 8, which is 80, divided by 2 will give you 40. The area of your triangle is therefore 40 centimetres squared. Question 11 is angles. So what is the size of angle X? Now, this is testing your knowledge of angles. So on a straight line, there are 180 degrees. So the missing part of this angle here would be 40. And 120 taken away from 80. 180 would leave you with 60 here. So you have 40 plus 60 is 100. 180 minus 100 gives you an angle of 80 degrees for X. X is 80 degrees. Now here you are looking at alternating angles. So this is effectively, alternating angles are a Z angle. And it basically means that if we know this angle, we would know this angle. Now we can work out this angle because it's on a straight line with this 130 degrees. So 130 away from 180 would leave us with 50 degrees. And if this angle is 50 degrees, this angle here would also be 50 degrees. So X for this one would have an angle of 50 degrees. Going down to question 12, this time we have a line graph which is measuring distance and time. So if we look down here, we've got our graph and we have our questions, and I'm just going to split my screen so that the graph can stay and we can roll the questions below. Okay, so when looking at a line graph, always read the information above. So this graph below records a car journey taken by Theo from his home to his cousin's house. The graph measures the distance travelled against the time taken. So on our y-axis, we have the distance travelled in miles here. And across the bottom here, we have the time, and our time starts at 12 and finishes at 1:15. So if we come down now to look at the first question, for how long was the car stationary? Now, we know that something is stationary on a time distance graph when the line is horizontal. So this is where the car is no longer moving, but obviously time is still going on. So the car was stationary for 15 minutes, okay? So it was stationary between 12:45 and 1300 hours. So it was stationary for 15 minutes. At what speed did the car travel between 12:15 and 12:45? Now, when it comes to doing speed, time and distance, it's always useful to use the speed, time, distance triangle. And we can divide that into 3, fill it in an alphabetical order: distance, speed, and time. Whatever it is you're trying to find, cover that over and it will give you the sum you need to do. So we want to know speed. So we're trying to find speed. So to do that, we would need to do distance divided by time. So the distance between 12:15 and 12:45, they went from 10 miles here to 20 miles here. So he travelled 10 miles. So your distance, you're doing the sum, distance divided by time. And we are looking for distance in miles per hour. So he travelled a distance of 10, and the time taken was 12:15 to 12:45. So that is half an hour. So we need to do 10 divided by a half. Now 10 divided by a half would be the same as 10 times 2, if you like, or if you want to keep it like that, you can do 10 over 1 divided by 1 over 2. Remember your keep, change, flip. So we would keep the first, change this to a times, flip this upside down so it becomes 2 over 1, and that's going to give us 20 over 1. That would be our speed in miles per hour. Do not put 30 underneath here because you're being asked for miles per hour, not miles per minute. Okay, so it makes much more sense to turn your time into a fraction of an hour. And the last question on here was, whoops, if Theo did the return journey without stopping and his journey time was 45 minutes, what was his average speed for the return journey? So again, looking at your speed, time, distance triangle, we're trying to find speed. And to find speed, we need to do distance divided by time. So we're going to do distance divided by time. The total distance travelled was 30 miles. Okay, so our distance is 30 miles. The time taken was 45 minutes. Well, 45 minutes is 3/4 of an hour. So we're going to do 30 over 1 divided by 3 over 4, which if we keep change flip becomes this. So 30 times 4 is 120. 1 times 3 is 3. 120 divided by 3 would be 40. And that would be his average speed on the return journey. So always with speed, time, distance questions, always draw yourself a little triangle. It makes life a whole lot easier. So coming down to question 13, this is sequences. So with sequences, always make a note of what's happening. So to go from 101 to 98, we are minusing 3, we are minusing 5, we are minusing, down here, we're minusing 7. So we can see we're minusing 9, we've minused 11. We're going down in increments of 2 on the odd numbers. So our next step would be to minus 13. And 66 minus 13 will give us 53. Now with this one here, it's less obvious, but we've got quite a large drop from here to here. We've got a large drop, but not as large from here to here. So it's highly likely we're dividing by a number. Well, 2 times 5 would be 10,000, so that would be too much. So we can maybe assume that we're dividing by 4. So let's try 9216 divided by 4. 4 goes into 9 twice, carry 1, goes in 3, will not go in to 1, but will go into 16, 4. Yes, that works. And if you wanted to check again, 2,304 divided by 4 would give you 576. So now we need to do 576 divided by 4. 4 goes into 5 once, carry 1. 4 goes into 17 4 times, carry 1. And 4 goes into 16 4 times, giving us 144, and 144 divided by 4 would be 36. So our missing number there is 144. If we come down to question 14, the first 5 terms of a sequence of numbers are, and they've given us a sequence here. Now, when you see a sequence like this, and we've got term, we're being asked for terms, numbers, and nth term here. Write the nth term sequence to start with, because this is going to make your life so much easier. So to go from -2 to 6, we are adding 8. From 6 to 14, we are adding 8. So this sequence is behaving like the 8 times table. So we can write 8n. N stands for the term number. Now the normal 8 times table would look like this. And to go from 8 to -2, we have taken away 10. To go from 16 to 6, we've also taken away 10. So the nth term expression for this sequence is 8n minus 10. And that just so happens to be the answer for part B. So we'll fill that in there. We can now use this formula to work out the 9th and 11th terms without having to write out the sequence. N, remember, stands for the term number. So if we pop 9 in for here, remember when a number sits next to a letter, it's multiplying. So 8 times 9 is 72, minus 10 would be 62. And for the 11th term, we're going to pop 11 in for n. 8 times 11 is 88, minus 10 will be 78. And you'll notice there's a gap of 16 between those because they're 2 terms apart. Now, here we're trying to find the value of x in a balance equation. We have unknowns on both sides. So we have 5x and 3x. We need to get all of the unknowns together over here. We then have our numerical amounts, our known amounts, if you like, -6 and +10. And we can put all of those together over here. So we're now going to solve to find x. So 5x is already on the red side, so we're going to leave that here. We're going to move 3x across the equal sign. Now, when it moves across the equal sign, it has to do the opposite. So the opposite of plus positive 3x, if you like, is minus 3x. And over here on the blue side, we already have positive 10. We're going to move negative 6 across, so it will become positive 6. So 5x minus 3x would leave us with 2x, and 10 plus 6 is 16. So 2 lots of x equals 16. So to find x, we would do 16 divided by 2, and our answer would be 8. So x equals 8. And you can try this to make sure it works by plugging 8 back into the equation. So 5 times 8 is 40, minus 6 is 34, 3 times 8 is 24, plus 10 is 34. So you know that x would be equal in that scenario there when it has a value of 8. So let's come down and have a look at question 15. So these are statements regarding property of 2D shapes. So which of the following statements are sometimes, always, and never true? Now, the biggest mistake people make here sometimes is they just write true or false. You haven't been asked to write true or false. You've been asked to write sometimes, always, or never. Okay, and it's important that you do that. With these, if you really have no clue, it's worth having a guess, because you could still, you could get lucky and happen to get the right answer, but hopefully you will know the actual facts anyway. So let's come and have a look here. We have the sum of the exterior angles of a polygon equal 360. Now, if you try to think, if I just draw you a rectangle, if you were to travel around the outside of this rectangle, you would effectively go in a circle as such. So if that helps you to remember, this is always the case. The exterior angles of any polygon always total 360. Diagonals on an oblong cross at right angles. So a rectangle, an oblong is a rectangle that isn't a square. If you were to draw yourself a quick sketch and draw your diagonals in on your rectangle, you will notice that they do not cross at right angles. They create obtuse angles here and acute angles here. So this is the answer to this one would be never. Opposite angles on a quadrilateral are equal. So with this one, this is true for a rectangle, for example. So a rectangle has 4 right angles. Whereas if you were to look at a kite, for example, so if we look at a kite, I'll draw a kite quickly here. With a kite, these angles, if I'd drawn better, would be equal. However, this angle is different to this angle down here. So in this case, your argument would always be sometimes. Okay, so sometimes they're equal, but not always. So looking at question 16, we have coordinates and we have a square on here. And the questions below relate to this coordinates grid. So looking at the first one, if the square is reflected in the y-axis, what would be the new coordinates of point A? So for this one, the first thing to recognise is which one is the y-axis. So that is this one here. If we come down here, this is your y-axis. Now, the easiest thing to do with this is to look at point A and see how far it is away from the axis on this side, and it will need to be an equal distance away there. So A is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares away this side. So it will need to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares away this side. Now, when reading coordinates, we always read the x coordinate first. So our x coordinate is 5, and we go up, and our y coordinate is 4. Now, question B, if the square is translated 2 squares to the right and 4 squares down, what would be the new coordinates of point A? So again, we're focusing on point A, and if we translated 2 squares to the right, we would go 1, 2 to the right, and then 4 squares down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, which would see us land here, and the x coordinate is -3, and the y coordinate would be 0. So -3, 0. Looking at C, if the square is rotated 180 degrees clockwise about 0.00, what would be the new coordinates of point A? So if you imagine sticking a pin in the middle here at 0, 0, you would be rotating 180 degrees, so it's a half turn. So with this square is going to end up in this quadrant here. Now, some people are very good at visualizing, others find it more tricky. So if you find it tricky, imagine that this point here is tied on at -5 here. You are going to move, think of the axes rotating rather than the shape. So this axis, a 90-degree rotation would take it to here, and a 180-degree rotation would take it to here. Now, point A is tied on to the axes at exactly the same point, and here it's tied on for 1, 2, 3, 4 squares. So if we count 1, 2, 3, 4 squares here, point A would end up being here. So your coordinates again here, x coordinate is 5, and your y coordinate is -4. So coming down to question 17, which of these measurements is greatest in value? Now, in order to compare them, you need to get them all into the same units. So we have a mixture of millimeters, centimeters, and meters. I would take them all into centimeters, probably because that's the easiest thing to do. Now, you need to remember your conversions. So 1 centimeter equals 10 millimeters, and 1 meter equals 100 centimeters. So that will be determine what you do here. So to go from centimeters into millimeters, you would divide by 10. So 9 millimeters would become 0.9 centimeters. 0.08 centimeters is already in centimeters, so we can keep that as it is. 0.909 meters. Now to go from meters to centimeters, we would times by 100. So you're going to move that decimal point 2 places. So this would be 9 centimeters. 8 millimeters, again, to go from millimeters to centimeters, we would divide by 10. So this would be 0.8 centimeters. 7 centimeters is already in 7 centimeters. And 80 millimeters, again, we would divide by 10. So move that decimal point 1 place, and this would be 8 centimeters. So now we can compare them. They're all in centimeters, and we've been asked which is the greatest value. And our answer here will be 9 centimeters. At its original form, it was 0.09 meters. Now for part B, we've been told that 1 mile equals 1,760 yards. How many yards is 3.5 miles? So we need to do 3.5 times 1,760. So I would recommend doing 1,760 times 3 to start with. And that will give you 0, 8, carry the 1, 3 times 7 is 21, plus the 1 is 22, carry the 2, and 3 times 1 is 3, plus the 2 would be 5. Now, when multiplying by a half, it's the same as finding half of something. So we could take our 1,760, divide by 2. So 2 will go into 17, 8 times, carry 1. 2 will go into 16, 8 times, and 0. And then if we add these two amounts together, so 5, 2, 8, 0, and 8, 8, 0, added together gives us 0, 6, carry the 1, 1, carry the 1, 6. So your answer will be 6,160 yards. Make my screen a little bit bigger. So for question C, the temperature at 0300 was -3.8 degrees Celsius. By 1500, it had risen by 12 degrees Celsius. What was the temperature at 1500 hours? So the easiest mistake to make here is to just kind of increase this number by 12. So what we're going to look at here is draw yourself a number line, because this just helps you to keep an eye on what you're doing. If we have -3.8 here, put 0 here. To go from -3.8 to 0, you would add 3.8, and then you need to add the remainder to ensure you've added 12 degrees Celsius. So the easiest thing to do now is to work out what 12 minus 3.8 would be. So 10 take away 8 is 2, 1 take away 3 we can't do, 11 take away 3 is 8, and your answer will be 8.2 degrees Celsius. Okay, so you're adding 8.2 here from 0. So you land at 8.2, and these two numbers together add up to 12. Looking at question 18, you're told you have a rectangle with a length of 12 and a width of 12 centimetres and a width of 25 millimetres. Find its area in square centimetres. So draw yourself a triangle, a rectangle. Label in centimetres. You've been asked to find the area in centimetres, so do convert your millimetres into centimetres. So remember, there are 10 millimetres in a centimetre. So this will become 2.5 centimetres here, and you have 12 centimetres here. And area is length times width. So we need to do 12 times 2.5, or 2.5, or 12 times 2 is 24. And 12 times a half, remember when you times by a half, it's the same as finding a half of something. So a half of 12 would be 6. Add those two amounts together and you're going to get your area of 30 centimetres squared. For part B, you're told another rectangle has an area of 72 centimetres squared. Its length is twice its width. What is the length of the rectangle? Now, there's lots of different ways of doing this, but again, I would recommend that you draw yourself a rectangle. You've been told that the area is 72 centimetres squared. You've been told that the length is twice the width. So if we label the width W, the length would be 2 times W, or 2W. And remember, area is length times width. So if we do 2W times W, we know that our answer is 72. So if we leave W times W behind, we have 72. We bring the times by 2 across the equal sign. It will become divide by 2, which is 36. So W times W equals 36. Well, W times W, they're the same letter, so they must be the same number. So effectively, you're looking to find the square root of 36, or recognise which number times by itself will be 36. So 6 times 6 is 36, therefore W must equal 6. So your width equals 6, and your length is 2 times 6, so your length is 12. Go back to the question and see what it was asking you. It was asking you what is the length of the rectangle, and your answer will be 12. So coming down here to the final part of this question, the perimeter of this rectangle is 84. So you've been given the perimeter and you're being asked what is the length of the longest side. Now, with a rectangle, this length is obviously the same as this length, and this width will be the same as this width. So you know that 5x minus 1 plus 3x plus 3 must equal half of the perimeter, so must equal 42. If you now choose to simplify that equation, so to do that, you want to bring all the x's together. So we have 5x and we have plus 3x. So 5x plus 3x would give us 8x. And then we also have, just highlight in a different colour, minus 1 plus 3. Well, minus 1 plus 3 would be plus 2. So 8x plus 2 must equal 42. So if we leave 8x on its own, it will equal 42. We can bring the plus 2 across the equal sign and it will do the opposite, it will be minus 2. So 8x must equal 40. Remember, when a number sits next to a letter, it's timesing. So 8 times something equals 40. You would know that 8 times 5 equals 40, therefore x must equal 5. You can then work out the length and width of your rectangle. So 5 times 5 is 25, minus 1 is 24, and 3 times 5 is 15, plus 3 is 18. You have been asked for the length of the longest side, and that is up here, so your answer is 24. So looking at question 19, we have a Venn diagram. And the Venn diagram above shows sports participated in by 30 children. So we have 3 sports, so we have 3 circles. The first question asks you, what is the probability that a child chosen at random plays all 3 sports? Give your answer as a percentage. Now, the point at which all 3 circles overlap is here, and we have 3 children in here. We know that we have it's out of 30, so 3 out of 30. Simplified, that would become 1/10, and as a percentage, we need it to be out of 100. So to go from 10 to 100, we've times by 10 here. Whatever we do to the bottom, we do the same to the top. 1 times 10 is 10, so 10 100ths would equal 10%. Now in part B, what is the probability that a child chosen at random swims and participates in exactly one other sport? And you've been asked, in this case, to give your answer as a fraction. So when we look up here, I'm just going to colour this in a different colour. The swimming circle's here. The children in this space swim and play football. And the children in this space swim and play netball. So we have a total of 11 children that swim and do one other sport. So that will be the numerator of our fraction. And the denominator will be the total number of children. And we cannot simplify that because 11 is prime and not a factor of 30. If we come down to question 20, this time we have a shape below has been created by sticking 7 identical cubes together. What is the volume of one of the cubes? Now with a cube, you know that the length, the width and the height will all be the same length. And the formula for volume is length times width times height. All of our measurements are going to be the same. The only piece of information we have is this bit here. The width or length of 3 of the cubes stuck together is 12 centimetres. Therefore, we can deduce that the length of one of the cubes would be 4. So therefore, your length is 4, your width is 4, and your height is 4. And 4 to the power of 3, or 4 times 4 times 4, is 64. Okay, because 4 times 4 is 16, and 16 times 4 will give you 64. Now, Zainab paints the outside of the shape, then separates it into 7 separate cubes. How many faces are unpainted? Now, some people will find this really easy, some will find it quite tricky. My advice would be to take it almost a row at a time. So looking at the top row, we've got 1 cube, and one of its faces is attached to a cube below. So this will have 1 unpainted face once they're separated. Looking at the middle row, they will have all 3 of their bases will not be painted because they're attached to the bottom row. We then have this one here, its top face will not be painted because it's attached to the single cube above. We've then got these cubes here where they're attached. These faces will be unpainted here and here. So if we look here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 unpainted faces on that row. Now coming down to the bottom row, the top face of all 3 cubes in the bottom row will not be painted because they're attached to the middle row. The bottom faces will all be painted, as will the end side faces and the back faces. However, where they are attached here and here and here and here, these faces will not be painted. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 faces unpainted here, giving us a total of 16 unpainted faces. Going to question 21. Here we've been told 6 children take a test and score the following numbers. What is their mean average score for the test? So to find the mean, we must add them all together and then divide by how many there are. Now, I would advise against doing a long column sum with 6 numbers in. Instead, I would recommend you pair them. So if we were to pair 15 and 25, that would give us 40. If we then paired 21 and 29, that would give us 50. And then we're just left to pair 18 and 24, which will give us 42. And if we add these together, we get 132. So that's the total for all 6 children. To find the average, we now divide that 132 by 6. And 6 goes into 13 twice, carry 1, and 6 goes into 12 twice, giving us an average of 22. Now for question 22, we're told that Poppy has 4 chocolate bars for every 7 lollipops. Now, once we start seeing language like this, you need to recognise you can use ratio. So if we give a column heading of C for chocolate and L for lollipops, for every 4 chocolate bars, she has 7 lollipops. She has 32 chocolate bars, so we can fill that in the chocolate column. And we can now work out how many lollipops she has because it will be the same proportion. So if we go from 4 to 32, we're timesing by 8, and 7 times 8 gives us 56. She gives Akshaya 3/4 of her lollipops. How many lollipops does she have left? So we need to take the lollipop amount here of 56, and to find 3/4, you would do 56 divided by 4, which would be 14. So 14 is equal to 1/4. Well, if she gives 3/4 away, she's left with 1/4, so she would be left with 14 lollipops. Alternatively, you could find 3/4, so you'd then have to do 14 times 3, which would give you 42. Take that away from the 56, and you would be left with 14 as well. But always go back and check what the question is asking you to calculate. So with question 23, you're told you have a whole number b, which has been multiplied by 3 and then rounded to the nearest 10 to give 70. What is the largest possible value that b could be? So with this one, a number times by 3 equals something rounded to 70. So you need to find a multiple of 3 in the 70s that is between 70 and 75. At 75, you would round up. So you can identify multiples of 3 because their digits will add up to a number in the 3 times table. So 71, 7 plus 1 would be 8, so that would be no good. 72, 7 plus 2 would be 9. That is a multiple of 3, so therefore, there is every possibility your number is 72. The next multiple of 3 would be 7 plus 5, 75, and that would give you 12. Now 75 would have to be rounded up to 80, so you know your answer must be 72. But we now need to find the value of b. Now b has been multiplied by 3 to give us 72. So once we've got our 72, to find b, we need to divide by 3. And that goes in 2, carry 1, 4. So your answer here will be 24. Down to question 24. Whilst on holiday in the USA, Caitlin bought a hat for US dollars 560. She worked out that was the equivalent to paying £4. If she also bought a hoodie for $21, what would that cost in pounds? So we need to work out the exchange rate. So with this, we have $5.60 is equal to £4. Now, there are lots of different ways of doing this, but it depends how confident you are with it. I'm going to show you the easiest way, if you like. So if we would need to divide 560 by £4 to find the exchange rate. Never divide by a decimal. So we could do, if we got rid of the decimal point, if you like, if we multiply out the decimal point, this would become 400 and this would become 560. And if we do 560 divided by 400, 400 will not go into 5, it will not go into 56, but it will go into 560 once. We can put a decimal point in here and a 0, and we can carry 160 across. Now 400 will go into 1,600 4 times. So our exchange rate for £1 equals $1.40. Okay, so that's our exchange rate there. We now need to do the same with $21. So if we divide $21 by $1.40, we will get our answer. So we're not going to divide by a decimal. So I'm going to times out $1.40 by 100 to make it 140. And I will times out $21. Remember, with money, it always has 2 decimal places to 2,100. And 140 will go into 210 once and would have 70 left over. And 140 will go into 700 5 times, giving us £15. Last question. Scott entered a table tennis tournament. He played 3 rounds. Each lasting 25 minutes with a 15-minute break between each round. If he finished playing at 1:30, what time was his first match? So we're trying to find the time of the first match, and we've been told to give our answer in 12-hour clock format. So he played 3 rounds at 25 minutes each. So 3 times 25 is 75 minutes. There was a 15-minute break between each round, so you need to be careful here. There will be a break between round 1 and round 2, and there would be a break between round 2 and round 3. So there's actually 2 breaks of 15 minutes, which is 30 minutes in total, and that adds up to 105 minutes. Now there's 60 minutes in an hour, so 105 minutes equals 1 hour and 45 minutes. And if we take that away from 13:30, now if you find subtracting time tricky, draw yourself a timeline. We are going from 13:30. If we go back 1 hour, okay, if we take away 1 hour, we would end up at 12:30. We could then take away 30 minutes, and that would take us back to 12 o'clock. So we've taken away 1 hour and 30 minutes. We need to take away another 15 minutes. If we minus 15 minutes here, oops, we would then end up at 11:45. Okay, so that would be our time. So it's 11:45. They've asked for it in 12-hour clock format, so don't forget to put your AM on there. So with question 23, you're told you have a whole number b, which has been multiplied by 3 and then rounded to the nearest 10 to give 70. What is the largest possible value that b could be? So with this one, a number times by 3 equals something rounded to 70. So you need to find a multiple of 3 in the 70s that is between 70 and 75. At 75, you would round up. So you can identify multiples of 3 because their digits will add up to a number in the 3 times table. So 71, 7 plus 1 would be 8, so that would be no good. 72, 7 plus 2 would be 9. That is a multiple of 3, so therefore, there is every possibility your number is 72. The next multiple of 3 would be 7 plus 5, 75, and that would give you 12. Now 75 would have to be rounded up to 80, so you know your answer must be 72. But we now need to find the value of b. Now b has been multiplied by 3 to give us 72. So once we've got our 72, to find b, we need to divide by 3. And that goes in 2, carry 1, 4. So your answer here will be 24.